Hi, I'm Chuck Dorsett for Weaver Leathercraft, and this is the Leather Element. If you've got a good question for us or a good idea for a leather element, drop it in the comment box below. One of my best friends is a mechanic, and the one thing I hear him say most often, use the right tool for the job. I fully agree, but I'd like to add to that, use the right tool and the right trick for the job. So we're going to look at some shop tricks. I hope there's something here that's going to help you out in your shop. So let's get started, see what we've got. Making keepers for our belts and straps is not terribly difficult, but it can be a little bit tedious. Now, as a side note, and I'll admit this, when I'm working on a more complicated project, well, I tend to forget our lowly keeper. So this trick is not really about remembering to make the keeper because obviously I'm not going to be any help there. But let's do this. Let's take some plywood and cut this into our standard widths. 1.5 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4, and 3/4. We can certainly make these out of leather, but wood though, prime way to go. What I can do is cut this. This in fact is 3/8 of an inch because to me, that's a good distance for 2 8-9. So I've got my body and then I've got my tongue. Not too tight, not too loose. But the cool thing here is that let's take our keeper, make a keeper out of our veg. Let's wet this and then work this onto our form. Let's press our corners in. Therefore, when that dries, we get a very clean, square, professional looking keeper. Now, when we wet form these, it's going to be several hours to let that dry. Yeah, I'm not going to wait. Let's just wet form these wet with dye. Slide these on, let them dry there. Now, cool point with this. Let's just leave them on there. Now we can add our top coat. Makes that very easy. But a cool trick too, I can't ever remember, and I don't know why, the length of my keeper. So I'm just going to mark that down right here for 1.5 inch, 4.5 inches, 1 inch, 3.5. Makes the whole thing very easy, but at the same time, let's just do several. You know what? While we're at it, let's make 4 or 5. Drop those in a box. So now I've got keepers ready to go. So when I forget that, which is common, I have a much shorter time to wait for that to dry. When we're hand sewing, we commonly need to hide a knot. Typically, we'll drop that in between our front and our back ply. But if we don't have a back ply, or the worst problem, we run short on our thread. Now, I'm not pointing fingers here because, well, it happens. But what we can do is hide a square knot in one of our holes. So I've got our chisel line and I've got a larger hole just so we can see how this is done. But it's going to make perfect sense. So on this hole, let's do this. Let's take one side or the other, come through that hole. Now, with our square knot, it's right over left, circle around, left over right, circle around, okay? So let's start right here. I'm going to take my right thread and I'm going to circle around, okay? Let's come back through our hole and draw that down. Okay, so now we've got a half hitch. We went right over left. Let's do this. Let's bring that right needle back through. Now let's go left over right, circle around, and then push that needle through. And there we go. We've got a nice square knot and it's hidden down inside that hole. Now here it doesn't look great because we're going to a larger hole and not a chisel hole, but nonetheless, we can absolutely do that. Pull that knot down, trim our thread on both sides, and that knot is absolutely hidden, but very strong. There is one thing that all crafters can agree on, and in fact, that's a rarity in itself. But when we get a request for a belt, we rarely get an accurate waist size. Now, it's typically not intentional. I'm not sure exactly what my waist size is, but we always think we're thinner than we are. So if you've had to make a belt twice because the first didn't fit, join the club. So let's do this. In our shop, let's keep a size belt. All this is just a 1 inch piece of 8 to 9 ounce, so it's an accurate weight. From my bend back, I've got this marked in inches, increments of 1 inch all the way out. In fact, let's see, I go all the way to 50 inches on this. And let's punch a hole on each one of those marks. So therefore, we can simply say, hey, try this belt on, and we're going to get an exact waist size every time. It's going to knock out the need for a second belt or belts that don't fit. Now, here's one point, and let's keep this between ourselves because you know what? The belt, it never lies. This is less of a trick and more of a valid point, but I feel like there's a misconception out there about black dye. If we're going to tool something and we're going to stamp it and really take some time to make that beautiful, the last thing we want to do is add black dye. It's going to hide everything. Tooling's going to disappear. Actually, it's almost the opposite. Look at that piece. I almost feel like I can see the tooling on the black more than I can on the mahogany. But here's two big points. Black, when we dye this, we don't worry about streaking. Secondly, top coat, same thing. But is that not a very rich, very clean, beautiful color? I tend to use a lot of lace in my shop. There are all kinds of projects that are made of or will use lace. Here's the problem though. Lace can be a little bit expensive. But secondly, we're not always assured that we can find a lace that's going to match our project. Well, let's do this. Let's kill two birds with one stone. So when I get at a cut of leather that I think is going to make a good lace, what I'm going to do is cut off a straight edge right across the spine. And I'm going to cut that as close as I can. Secondly, let's take our 2-inch straight edge. Let's drop this in. And now let's cut a 2-inch band. Good. There's a band. In fact, this is our water buffalo, and I love this. It does make a great lace. All right, let's step over to our pattern table because we're going to look at a tool that's just about going to pay for itself the first time we use it. This is our leather lace stripper. This is a tool that's going to pay for itself in about 3 days. What we can do is drop a blade. In fact, if we can see those blades, yeah, we can drop a blade in between each one of these plates. So we can cut 1/8 of an inch lace. I've got it set every other, so we're cutting 1/4 of an inch lace. But like I said, this will pay for itself almost immediately. So let's clamp this onto our table. There we go. Okay, this is our guide. What this will do, will hold it'll hold the leather down onto the set of plates. So let's start right here. I'm going to slide this in. Let's lock that down. Now, I tend to like to keep a little pressure on this side to keep this straight. The one thing we don't want to do is try to pull this to the edge guide because it'll bow out on us. But let's see how this works for cutting lace. And look at that. I've got, let's see, these are about 5 feet long times 8, 40. I've got about 40 feet of 1/4 inch lace here. So like I said, this will almost pay for itself immediately. One other great point, and I love this, because I do a lot of mystery braid cuffs, and it's tough to cut 2 parallel lines perfectly separated. But right here, I've got a 3/4 inch strap. I've got my blades set at 1/4 of an inch each. Look at that. How easy is that? Now, it's not a tool I use often, but it is absolutely worth every penny. With the right tools and the right tricks, anything is possible. So I hope there's some good information for you. I hope there's something here you can use to make that time in your shop more enjoyable. Thanks for taking time to watch The Leather Element. Good luck with your projects.